Kia ora everyone, I'm Nick, founder of Kenzie's Gift. I'd like to welcome you to the Grief Podcast, brought to you by Kenzie's Gift. We're a New Zealand charity that provides mental health support for young Kiwis who've experienced the death of a parent or sibling. We don't avoid talking about death here. It's hard, it's real, and it changes everything. This podcast is a place for honest conversations about what it's like when someone in your life dies, how grief shows up, and what comes next. I'd like to say a huge thank you to SkyCity Auckland Community Trust for funding this podcast and making these conversations possible.
I'm Sasha, your host. When I was 17, my mum died of breast cancer. It turned my life upside down. I got support from Kenzie's Gift, and now I'm sitting down with other matatahi who, like me, have had a loved one die. Grief is different for everyone. Some days it hits you hard. Other days you feel nothing. There's no right or wrong way to deal with it. But one thing we do know, talking about grief makes it feel less lonely. In this podcast, we talk about death, grief, love, memories, and everything in between. If something in this episode does feel like too much, you don't have to push through. Pause, take a break, and come back when you're ready. In this episode, I'm talking to Guy, whose mum died when he was 7 and girlfriend died earlier this year at 26. Guy is a civil engineer with a passion for the environment and marine conservation. We talk about how introspection has helped Guy navigate his grief. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Grief Podcast. I'm really excited and honoured to be joined here today by Guy. Now, Guy's mum died when he was 7, and also his girlfriend died earlier this year at the age of 26. So I just want to welcome you to the podcast. I'm super happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And I would absolutely love if you told us a bit about your loved ones, about your mum and about Wednesday and what they both meant to you.
Of course. My mum died from cancer when I was 7 years old. There isn't a huge amount I can remember kind of from that stage of my childhood. I do remember the feeling of being distinctly loved by my mum and just her happiness and her passion and bubbliness. For a couple of years she was sick with cancer and we didn't really know what was going on. It was only kind of in the last couple of days where we found out she was going to die that we really started to see the magnitude of the situation. With Wednesday, we've known each other for, I'd say, 5 or 6 years, you know, had been good friends for quite a while and eventually decided we wanted to try our hand at a relationship. Her joy and her generosity and how much she loved life just massively resonated with me. I know when we were up on the mountain where the incident occurred, I'd never seen someone to be so happy with crampons on, walking in cold snow and having a blowing wind in your face. I wasn't even smiling and I loved getting out there and she was just beaming.
Loving it.
She absolutely loved life, yeah.
I remember you saying that you guys met volunteering. That was right, eh?
Yes, so doing volunteer conservation work, teaching people how to snorkel with kind of a conservation-based background and mindset to get people to care a little bit more about what's going on in the oceans.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Sounds like she really cared about giving back and also really adventurous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We scuba dived together and originally I thought, I'm not going to go dive on shipwrecks. Then she said, well, let's go do this shipwreck course. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And I love it to pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like she made such an impact on you, on the environment, on people around her. She sounds like she has really made a big impact.
Absolutely. And even in her work, she worked for University of Auckland as a senior lab technician. Wow. Just loved helping PhD students and master's students out with their research work. It really was every aspect of her life.
Oh, that's so amazing. And what would you say would be your best or your favourite memory with Wednesday?
There's a good few.
Yeah.
She was very passionate about everything she did. She loved a good project at home. I remember one day she was just texting on her phone and, you know, she said to me, I got us a spa pool for free.
What?
I said, sorry, what do you mean you got a spa pool for free? I said, we're going to get a trailer. We're going to go somewhere out west and load up this free spa pool. It wasn't working, but she said it was going to be a good project. And yeah, we just worked on the spa pool together to get it all up and running, and now I've got a really nice spa pool at my place.
Amazing.
Yeah, every weekend, trips to Bunnings and doing stuff around the house. I think it was just the projects and the everyday stuff that I really, really remember.
Yeah, sounds like always sort of like to do things and get out there and be busy and make memories.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I know, especially with your mum dying at such a young age, I met some other people as well whose loved one died at a younger age, that it is really hard to even remember perhaps that person, who they were or what they were like. Could you tell me a bit more about your experience with that, with your mum's death and with your mum?
I guess it can be sometimes a bit hard for me to compare to what I guess a normal childhood would look like, because all I have really experienced is kind of that loss at that young age. But as time has kind of progressed, I've been able to comprehend a little bit the impact that's had on me, both in my childhood and in my adult life. From what I've heard from friends and family, I do remember my mum was a really lovely, bubbly individual who also just loved life.
Yeah.
And was always kind of, happy through all that she did. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful to hear. And have you found it comforting in a way, learning things about her from other people as you've grown up? Or is it even more difficult hearing things, knowing that, you haven't been able to experience that growing up with her?
It has been really nice learning about her. I might not have any direct memories with her, but I know the feeling that family and friends are conveying. I know how much she really did care about my brother and I. And yeah, it can be hard at times because, I've seen firsthand what the loss of a mother at such a young age can have on my adult life. It's been a really interesting kind of process to go back and work with those emotions and, kind of remember my mum when I don't really have any direct thing to compare to, I guess.
Absolutely. How do you navigate that? How have you navigated that?
Well, it's a lot of hard work. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Lots of therapy, lots of self-introspection, and it was only kind of in my later years that I kind of worked out that there are a lot of deep-seated behaviours that were kind of ingrained in me at a relatively young age.
Yeah.
And having to come back and deal with a lot of that unprocessed emotion. No one ever really wants to go back and work on all the difficult stuff, but it is something that needs to be done. Right?
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I really, really relate to that as well. And I love that you mentioned therapy and talk therapy, obviously. And there's so many ways that we can process our emotions, and obviously therapy being one. When did you start that? Was that right after your mum's death, or what did that look like for you?
In the first few weeks and months, we definitely did have some form of therapy. I can't remember too much, between then and sort of early teenage years. I do know around that time, I definitely noticed my mental health started to dip quite a bit. So I made a concerted effort to, go to therapy, and it's been a pretty important part of my life, ever since the age of 7, and I'm 26 now, is very critical for, finding out who I really am.
Obviously, you're processing throughout, but was there at all sort of like an age or a time when you were like, oh, thank goodness, like I'm doing this? Or did it feel like, a difference was being made? And how did that feel for you?
I think I've kind of had those moments every so often throughout my life. I don't know that there's a kind of a distinct moment where it's kind of flipped a switch and everything has changed. But even just small insights that I've had into myself, not just in therapy, but in the quiet moments at home and the moments of journaling and meditation and that. Those have been the moments that I've kind of gone, well, okay, something's working here. I'm kind of getting to the core of things a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's sort of almost like the sort of talk therapy sessions kickstart some thoughts and reflections of things, and then you've gone off into go deeper. And I know we've talked a bit about the journaling and the meditation. So tell us about that, your experience with how that's helped you with this.
I think everyone goes through a bit of a stage, whether they grew up religious or not. They kind of look to something external. And I went to a Christian school. In a little bit of the later years, I wanted to look kind of elsewhere. So my friends invited me out to a festival where I went to some meditation classes. And that really kick-started this idea of wanting to look inwards into how both the habits that have been ingrained in me and, behaviours I have, how that goes and forms my everyday thinking. And I found that the best path for me was through a secular Buddhist lens, so stripping out all of the religious aspects and sticking primarily with the philosophical ideas. It is definitely approaching things head on. I don't think anyone really wants to sit still and be with their thoughts for any amount of time, but the amount of understanding that allows you to have has just been pretty profound, I would say. Yeah.
That's really great, and I'm really glad that you've been able to explore what works for you, because everyone's different, hey?
Absolutely.
And to be able to explore something, give it a go, and then find that thing that really works for you. Yeah, I had a similar experience, I think, when I got to a point where I was like, okay, something needs to change, and that's when I went to therapy, and that was 5 years after my mum died.
Absolutely, and I know, especially with starting therapy and starting this process of self-introspection, it's pretty normal for people to feel absolutely awful.
Oh, yes! Let's normalise that.
As soon as they get into it, I've buried these thoughts and feelings for most of my life.
Whoops.
Yeah. And you start to look at it and you go, oh my gosh, this is huge. And you don't even know where to start. But even just that first session with a therapist where you've kind of gone, okay, I'm starting to understand things a little bit, that's kind of where you notice progress.
Absolutely.
And it's a bit like going to the gym. I don't know many people who say, I feel really good wanting to go to the gym and feeling great after it. It is a workout, and you're working on those muscles to become stronger. I find that's a similar process with meditation. In the early stages, it's not really that easy to enjoy meditation as such, because you keep noticing your mind wanders off, and you bring it back, and you beat yourself up for your mind wandering off. But that process of bringing it back really can be transformative.
Absolutely, and learning those tools and those skills, and that's why we went to therapy, right? To get those and to help process all that that's come up. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Right.
And so we've talked a bit about some tools that have been really helpful for you in your grief. And has there been anything profound that's been like, hey, that really stuck with me, or that really helped me get through that, in terms of your mum or in terms of Wednesday?
I don't think there's any kind of distinct moment where I make this kind of huge realization. A lot of these insights for me have tended to come naturally, or just at a moment where I couldn't have even expected it, right? Yeah. It could be out on a hike, could be while I'm walking down the road. With therapy, there's this kind of idea that, I'll go to 5 sessions of therapy and things are going to be all good. I'm going to be cured. I'm sorted.
Yeah. No.
It really is that long process of, getting to the core of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And with things that you have even heard about from your mum, do you think there's something special about them that you see in yourself now?
It was quite a young age, so there isn't too much that I can kind of really look back on. I've got family that always say, you look like your mum, or we can see my mum in us. But there's nothing really direct that I can kind of look back on, I guess.
Yeah. And when sort of those things get said to you, how do you feel? Is it sort of in a way of, that's nice to hear, but that's hard because I didn't experience that myself? Or tell me about that.
Yeah, I definitely think there is an aspect of, I didn't really know my mum all that well. My brain probably hid it back as a, sense of self-preservation. But it definitely is nice to kind of, hear things about my mum and understanding that, she really did care and she really was lovely, and that people see those qualities in my brother and I.
And what about for Wednesday? I know you said she's had a really big impact on your life, and what about her do you see in yourself, perhaps?
I think just her passion and her joy for life, I've really tried to carry through. Obviously, being through all the stuff that I've been through, it can be hard to find happiness in the day-to-day. And the one thing that has always stuck with me throughout all of this is just the happiness that Wednesday had. She had the most infectious smile, and I remember after the incident, and talking to people the night before we were in the hut, there must have been about 30 of us in there, and her smile would just brighten up the room. And that is all I can really think about, you know.
Thank you for sharing that. I'd love if we could talk a bit about such a unique experience that you've been through. Obviously, we've both our mums have died, but that almost like second layer of Wednesday dying earlier this year. Would you mind telling us a bit about what that was like, having been through death already, an experience with death and experiencing it for the second time? How did you even start to process, or what has that been like for you?
There's definitely a aspect of feeling like I have to process all of this again, and I don't know that I have the energy to go through it all again.
Yeah.
That first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, all of that time, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. But in saying that, I did have this experience younger, obviously different magnitude, different situation, but I can see the grief process for what it is. I know that there's, you know, the stages of grief, the anger, the disbelief and all that, and having felt that at such a young age as an adult and experiencing something similar, I can note those stages a bit more clearly. I don't think it makes the process any easier.
Of course.
In fact, I think it digs up a lot of what I've already experienced as a kid. But in the same way, it lends some kind of insight into knowing that things will get better over time. And again, I've already got some of these tools in my toolbox that have accumulated for however many years at therapy that I can kind of implement to help myself just, you know, get through things a little easier.
Absolutely.
It brought a sense of awareness that I can't bury these emotions. I have to confront them head on. And burying things in the early days is not a way to carry things through, especially with, you know, the stoic New Zealand culture we have of just toughen up, get through.
She'll be right.
She'll be right, exactly. Those first weeks and months, this needs to be talked about. I can speak from my own experience saying that, you know, I suppressed my emotions for a good few years of my life. And they come back whether or not you like it. You know, other experiences that might not have been directly related to loss bring up these emotions that I know that I suppressed at a young age. And I think that it is critical to kind of see these emotions when they come up and not deny them. Just acknowledge them for what they are.
And it can be so hard, right? I guess we both know that firsthand, and I definitely relate to parts of suppressing them. I think we're not taught how to grieve. No one's taught what to do, right? And we only learn these tools from having these experiences, and there's no right or wrong, but I guess we've both learned if you suppress, well, they're going to come up in, you know, some different way, and then they sort of like deal with it now, and you're like, okay, I really relate to what you said before, especially those early stages, suppress. This had never happened. My mum had never died before, so how would I know what to do? It was the first time. Your mum hadn't died before. How were you meant to know? And you were 7, you know?
That's right.
No one knows these things, but those early stages are really challenging. And I guess for anyone listening, it's normal to feel like you just need to survive. You got to do what you got to do to survive, because how else do we know what to do? And I think if I could go back, I would say to like younger Sasha, actually sit in the emotions. I don't regret anything, of course, because everything I did up to now has got me to here, and I'm glad that we can work on it now, of course, right? But if I could go back, I would tell 17-year-old Sasha, sit in the emotions, and it is so okay to cry. It is okay to take time off. It's okay to not want to see people. It's okay to need people. It's okay to need whatever it is that you need, because that is normal, and there's no right and there's no wrong.
That's right.
What would you tell 7-year-old guy, and what would you tell 26-year-old guy?
I think the message would probably be the exact same as what you're saying. You need to not confront these emotions, but acknowledge these emotions that you're feeling. It's okay just to sit with them, and it's okay to feel terrible. To tell someone they shouldn't feel terrible in those kind of situations, that makes no sense. And it's really important that we do just look at these things. You know, one of the survival mechanisms I basically put upon myself is not crying. Crying in a society generally seen as a sign of weakness. And it got to the point where I forgot how to cry. Having to go and essentially reteach myself how to cry. You know, I never thought my tear ducts would hurt when I start crying, but to be able to learn how to cry again really was a crucial thing for me, because it is a release. And we need those releases in that time, because again, it will just get bottled up, pushed down, and it will come out at a later date.
And I mean, for everyone listening too, it's hard. We know it's hard to feel the things too. We sort of learn how to do it now, and we'll find new ways to explore them. I think that's some valuable thoughts that we can, pass
Absolutely. On. And I think in saying this, I know, there are times people will need to, be strong just to get through a couple bits and pieces, but we do need to acknowledge that emotion still.
Wow, that was a really cool, that was a really cool conversation. I know it's been challenging to remember parts of your mum, but do you think that should be proud of the person that you've become today?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I've always said I would never put my worst enemies through what I've been through, but I can't change what that is, and I'm proud of the person I've become today. I don't know what kind of person I would have become if I didn't go through these things, but I've done some pretty good things in this world. So I do know that my mum would be proud.
Yeah.
And although it's hard for 7-year-old me to realise that, it is true that my mum would be proud.
That's beautiful. I have no doubt that she would be so proud.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what about Wednesday?
Oh, 100%. Just to go and do the things that I'm still doing, back at work full time. I'm volunteering for civil defence and experiencing Marine Reserves. I'm sure she'd probably tell me, just chill out a bit.
Just a little.
You don't need to rush back into things. But I do know she would be proud of me for keeping on.
So it really sounds like you're finding ways that really honour her and how you live. And I guess through honouring her, it's honouring yourself.
Absolutely.
Is that how it feels?
Yeah, definitely. And it's not an easy thing to come by to get to that point. I know for a lot of young children, the loss of a parent tends to manifest in a form of self-blame. Obviously, at the age of 26, I know that I wasn't the reason that my mum got cancer.
Yeah. But
there is this kind of subconscious link that you notice, and that kind of gets reflected later in life quite a lot. If something goes wrong in your life, you think, what have I done to cause this?
Yeah.
All because of this root kind of thought that I was a bad kid, therefore my mum died.
Wow.
And to have to kind of work on that throughout the years has been quite a profound transformation.
I bet it has been. And was that something that you discovered by yourself or through therapy or?
Definitely through a good bit of therapy, I would say. A lot of it has come with self-introspection. And it is something I still battle with today. I mean, what happened on the mountain with Wednesday was a horrible accident. And I know in my heart that I'm not to blame for this. But there is still this sense of not so direct blame, but a more, I don't know how to describe it, an esoteric blame, essentially. It's like I'd been trusted with this incredible vase under my care, but with no direct influence of my own, that vase has broken.
Yeah.
I don't feel directly like I broke the vase, but it was under my care. And again, on the surface, I know that is not the case. I did not directly cause this. But it's working with that subconscious element that sticks there as a result of what I've experienced as a kid in the loss of my mum.
Of course. And I know what it's like as well, so challenging to have that theme come up again and to work through that. And I know we sort of touched on how Wednesday's death has actually brought up some emotions and things to work through from your mum's death as well. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. As I've kind of mentioned, 7-year-old me processing the emotions, not knowing entirely how to navigate it, a lot of core beliefs and core habits and behaviours kind of stuck. And through the years of my journey building my mental health fitness, I've tried to navigate them, but never really been able to get to the core of these kind of values. I wouldn't wish what I've been through on any of my worst enemies. But going through this incredibly profound loss again has allowed me a little bit to work on some of those core beliefs. There's a lot of self-validation issues. I would look externally for validation rather than giving it to myself. And it's often in those most difficult times that you're going through that you can make this meaningful change and rewire those negative thought patterns.
Just want to acknowledge how much hard work you have put into the experiences that you've been through, because it's not easy, and oftentimes the road we take is the path of least resistance, right? But
absolutely.
It sounds like you have really been like, yes, this happened, and yes, this is horrible, but it has happened, so this is what I'm going to do about it.
That's right.
And it takes guts, and it takes, like we've talked about, that mirror being held up, there's nowhere to hide. You just got to deal with it, right?
That's right.
So I just want to say it's not easy. So just a whole lot of admiration, just like respect, because I get it. And yeah, just well done.
No, thank you. I know for a good portion of, a lot of the grief that I've experienced, there've been instances where I've gone, okay, look, when I feel a little bit better, then I can start working on things. And while survival instincts, you definitely need to do that sometimes. I'm not going to go and hunt down my deepest, darkest traumas while I'm in a meeting at work, You have to just kind of get through it at some point. But in those really dark moments, you are exposed to those kind of core values and core beliefs. And it's at those times where a lot of the meaningful work can be done, and for you to just observe those core beliefs. Kind of look at yourself and go, this is where my train of thought goes.
Yeah.
This is problematic. And it's in those times that you can really make that most meaningful change.
Say if you had one more day to spend with your mum and with Wednesday, what do you think you'd do with them, or say to each of them, individually or together? Whatever you would. Yeah.
That's a very good question. I think in both situations, I don't know that I would have changed anything. I can speak a bit more to Wednesday, but I remember she bought me a journal. She knew I was very much into my mental health and wanting to journal and get better. And to start the journal off, she wrote me a letter.
Wow.
It basically said all the things she was looking forward to doing with me as our relationship kind of continued. And she kind of wrote this list of, climbing up mountains, jumping off waterfalls, diving on shipwrecks, and just going on hikes. And I remember after the loss and going and just starting to journal and reading that, and essentially being able to tick off every single thing that she listed.
Wow.
And I'd only been in a relationship with her for 8 months. Wow. And there is not a single weekend I would have changed.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that if I only got one more day with her, I wouldn't have changed anything. I would have just done it exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that is the exact same situation with my mum as well.
Thank you for sharing that.
No worries.
Sounds like some amazing adventures and memories that you hold in your life and in your heart forever.
Definitely.
What would you want others who are going through grief now to know, whether they've been through it at a young age of 7, whether they've been through it a few months ago? What would you want others going through grief now to know?
I'd say whatever you are going through now, just acknowledge that. If you're only just recently been through a loss and you're feeling happy some days, acknowledge that. Don't invalidate that. If you're feeling absolutely awful, observe it. Instead of saying, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm lost, is changing that to, I feel sad, I feel angry, and I feel loss. And you can essentially just label things a little bit better while not becoming them. And just let every day come as it comes. It will come in waves, and it always does. And I'm nearly 6 months on, and there'll just be days I'll just be walking along and just get hit, and I can't even walk. It all just kind of hits me and going, oh my God, she is dead.
Yep.
You can't beat yourself up for having those thoughts, because you can't control those thoughts. You can't control these visceral reactions that these still have, and ultimately you can't control how you're going to feel on any given day.
Yeah.
So just acknowledging it and going, okay, today I feel pretty awful.
Yeah.
Today I feel pretty happy. And just not be attached to it, and just take every day as it comes.
Okay, so acknowledging a feeling, giving it a label, and instead of letting it maybe define you for that day, but defining it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, that's some really good advice. Thank you. And I think that can be, really helpful, and that's a really practical tool that we can put into, any day for everyone, particularly with grief.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to have experienced grief to utilize these tools.
Yeah.
Even someone who's probably gone through a relatively sheltered life can probably look back to their childhood and say, okay, there are some ingrained habits here. There's something I can work with.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is just meeting every day as it comes.
Absolutely. Oh, guys, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today. I know that it's not always easy speaking about, the things that you've been through and the things that we've been through, especially with it being so soon that Wednesday had died. It's such a unique experience that I'm sure some people listening have been through something similar, whether it be one or two or even more people, special loved ones in our lives as well. So I just want to say the biggest thank you for being here and for talking with me today. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. I've really appreciated the conversation.
Thank you. Grief is tough, and you don't have to do it alone. If this episode brought anything up for you, talk to someone, a friend, whānau, or someone you trust. If you're in New Zealand and want professional support, Kenzie's Gift is here. We offer one-on-one therapy for under 24s, plus support kits and resources at kensiesgift.com.
And if you're outside New Zealand, check in with your GP, your school counsellor or a local support service. And if you need urgent help, please contact emergency services.
Thanks for listening. Take care and we'll catch you next time. Ka kite anō.